Adam Prem is Global Public Sector Lead for Defense and Intel at ServiceNow. Adam, thanks for being here, sir.
Thanks so much, George, for having me.
So we were talking before the cameras got rolling about something called a disconnect scenario. What's the threat entailed in a disconnect scenario?
Yeah, so there's actually two sort of vectors with disconnected operations. So number one, you can talk about sort of your naval vessels and your major assets that are defense related in situations where they can't connect to the internet. That's a real thing. They call it DDIL environments. And so there is a threat related to that as far as when you lose access to the internet, how do you continue to operate if a lot of your information is in the cloud? And that's very succinct to a specific vessel, perhaps, or an area for defense. But you know, the second factor I think we were kind of chatting about was what happens if the global threats. What we kind of see happening is our adversaries are probably going to go after, from a first strike perspective, after our electrical grids, after our internet capabilities. So what happens if they bring down an entire region, like the Indo-PACOM region, or a country, or even a city? So that is a very big risk, and it's kind of a well-known risk. We think that's going to be sort of hypothesized as the first strike, and so I think defense agencies and the industrial base that is servicing the defense needs to understand the risk associated with what happens if a defense organization has all their data in a cloud. If there is some severance of cables or whatever network information to the cloud, what do we do then? Defense organizations are kind of left without their data, without any sort of workflow or automation, and they go back to the Stone Age where they came from. And so I think industry right now is grappling with this idea that there is a potential that we will have this sort of disconnected mode of operations, and we're working with defense organizations to make sure that their data resides somewhere in a backup state. Maybe it's locally on-prem for them to continue their operations and their mission work.
There are a couple things I want to tease out of there, Adam. That's a big topic. It's definitely discussed here in Honolulu at the Indo-Pac event itself. But the phrase mission resiliency comes to mind. People, public sector, private sector alike, are talking about this phrase, mission resiliency. Take that from like buzzword territory for me into something tangible, something mission oriented. Like, what is mission resiliency? Yeah,
I mean, if we break it down, mission is our ability to do our jobs. That's defense speak for I got to do my job and I got to do whatever it is that I do from a defense perspective. Resiliency is really just it's buzzword for I have to pivot the way I do my job. The way the defense organizations right now they're using a lot of cloud capabilities, and so to do their job, their mission, they are enabled by cloud solutions. In order to be resilient, you need a sort of a backup system. We can't let our defensive organizations drop the ball because we didn't give them the means to continue their mission and be resilient in that mission by not providing a sort of a backup situation. And so that's kind of a real life situation would be, I'm about to plan an exercise in the Indo-PACOM region. We've got all of our information, all of our planning, our allied information, we're collaborating somewhere in the cloud. A threat occurs, we lost all that. In a real life situation where we are today, we probably would have to abort that exercise completely, which could really threaten our country's safety. And so being resilient allows us to kind of, okay, the cord was cut, we have no access to the internet, we're redirecting all traffic to all the same data that we had in the cloud, but we have it stored locally so we can continue to do our jobs.
I want to stay with that cord cutting scenario, that metaphor there, because agencies, as you know, have been on this journey for years now. Federal civilian, intelligence community, Department of Defense, now Department of War, where they have moved more and more into the cloud. Many of them, in fact, are cloud native at this point. If I fall into that bucket and I'm a public sector organization, what questions should I be asking myself right now to remain mission resilient?
Yeah, I think the threat is real. I think defense organizations should be looking at their industries and the vendors that they work with, because I think we may have over-rotated. We didn't think about that at the time. It was kind of this idea, well, we got to get off-prem and make it cloud. And I think we can all acknowledge the value that cloud solutions bring. I don't think anyone misses out on that, but I think we over-rotated in the sense of we can't completely neglect self-hosted work. It may not be our go-to for day-to-day operations. We will still always want to work in the cloud because of the flexibility it gives us. But again, I think we would be remiss if we don't at least look at opportunities and look at that very real threat and think our day-to-day, our number one mode of operation should be cloud, but we got to have something that backs it up, because if what we think might happen comes to fruition, we're going to need that bad.
Take that, Adam, and put it through an Indo-Pacific lens for me. We're here in the environment right now. You used the phrase elevated trust with our allied nations. What does that have to do with cloud computing and being mission resilient?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you take a look at just from one country's perspective, that whole scenario that I just painted, sort of the losing information to the cloud, is one thing. What's unique about Indo-PACOM, and it's really, I think, in Indo-PACOM and perhaps the Nordic region, where you're very close to the fight, you've got a lot of different countries that are trying their best to share information to create a real collaborative environment. As far as, you're Canada, I'm Australia, I need to send you information from a cybersecurity threat awareness perspective so that our mutual mission is trusted. So, but I think from a technology perspective, that's never really been the problem. All these technologies, anyone that you see on the floor today has open APIs and they have ways to share data. That's never been the problem. The problem is very policy driven. As you would imagine, in a defense situation, people want to keep their data close to their chest. That's a natural reaction, and especially when it comes to defense-related info, where you've got secret, top secret, different classification levels. It's an honest sense of just feeling I don't trust anyone. I have to keep this here. But I think as sadly, kind of in today's world, we sort of all, and this is part of the reason why we're at this conference, right, is it's a good opportunity in Hawaii here to bring US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea, Singapore, right? We bring them together and say, we have to start working together a little bit better, and let the data flow a little more seamlessly. And I think the elevated trust comes into play where, can we drop our guard just a little bit to allow ourselves to start sharing information? We'll do it with the best governance and intent as possible. Understand that there are risks associated with that, but I think, again, due to kind of where we are in the world today, I think we have to start looking in that realm of, we got to trust each other a little bit more. And we'll do it with the right governance, but let's start sharing data, otherwise we all fail.
Is the self-actualized version on the other end of that scenario better use, more effectiveness of artificial intelligence? I mean, I know your company, many others in the private sector are trying to work in order to unlock more value for the public sector relative to AI. Am I reading that right?
You're spot on. AI has hit us like a tsunami with regards to, oh my God, it's here. And then we kind of start posing the questions, what do we want to use it for? What can we use it for? And so, for example, like the first thing that you see is a lot of generative AI. So building content, creating videos. You're seeing all kinds of stuff that Google's doing now with Gemini, where they can you write a prompt, it creates an actual video that's very realistic. So that was generative AI. We've sort of modified, we've evolved to agentic AI, where now we've got a group of AI agents that are doing work on behalf of humans. And so it's moving very, very quickly. But where we were going earlier with our conversation is that elevated trust. I think this is the tip of the iceberg. I think with AI, what we can start to see some good usage when we talk about elevated trust is we can use AI to allow us to maintain our own security controls. So I mentioned this idea that I'm Australia and you're Canada, and I want to share data with you. What if I accidentally overshare? That's what these countries are kind of concerned about, and I think that's what's limiting that trust. But if you think about AI coming in and stepping in the middle and saying, I'm about to share data with that country, it's good intent, but what you don't realize is there's sensitive material that you're beginning to share, and AI is going to cut it off and say, look, the business rules are in place where you shouldn't do that. So I think there's actually an opportunity where AI can kind of help us govern ourselves with the data that we're sharing. I think it's a huge opportunity. Like I said, with regards to all the AI that's out there and it's coming, I think we're still at the tip of the iceberg, and we're still learning about how to use it effectively.
Adam Prem, Global Public Sector Lead, Defense and Intel, ServiceNow, sir. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, George.